Welcome to Readworthy. My name's Kendra, and today we are going to talk about books that either let me down or I just couldn't stand reading it in the first place. So these are about books that I have read that I was expecting big things, and it just was just like, 3 stars, let's move on. Or it's books that I was like thinking it would be pretty good, and it sucked. It's kind of a negative video because it's not going to be about gushing stuff about books. It's going to be like, books. And since I did a video that talked about what I liked so far this year in books, I figured I would do a video that talked about books that might be well liked, might be highly rated. It might be books that I just thought were going to be a good one. And they were not for me. Might have been for you, but they weren't for me. So here we go. So the first book we're going to talk about is a book that is kind of new. It's called The Push by Ashley Audring. I'm letting someone borrow this book right now. They just finished it themselves, and so I don't have it, but here we go. I know my husband's going to take care of that for me. It is a thriller that is about a mother who has a child, and they aren't exactly seeing eye to eye. There's some creepy kitty stuff happening in this book. And I thought that it would be really, really enjoyable and kind of creepy since, I do have a daughter myself. Really, it just pissed me off instead. I gave this book a 2-star. I thought that, like I said, I thought this book was going to give me the creepy vibes, especially since I have a daughter. I thought, oof, this is going to be fun. And it wasn't to me. I'm not obviously going to give out spoilers, even though I feel like when you're ranting and raving about a book, it's sometimes kind of hard not to. But I just felt like this book, there's a lot of blaming thyself, not blaming thyself, even though you should have blamed yourself. It's kind of like you don't know if you can trust the narrator at all, one way or the other. I kind of had already decided that if I was going to trust her or not from the kind of middle of the book, and at the end my assumption was correct. And I really thought, like I said, I thought it was going to creep me out. I thought it'd be a good thriller, mess with your mind kind of thing, but really it just hacked me off. It just pissed me off. And if you're going into this book or you've read this book and you're like, what exactly pissed you off, Kendra? The mom pissed me off. And I wish I could feel a little bit more sorry for her, but I can't. She pissed me off mainly during the time that her daughter was a wee little baby, wee little lass. The mother just really irked me. But also there's a lot, it comes from 2 point of views. There's the mother when she's grown up and being a mother herself, and then there's a time where she is a kid herself and having a bad mother. That part of the story I did really enjoy, and I could see where the story was going because of that scenario, what was going on there, and I understood it. It just pissed me off. So I was pretty much mad throughout the entire rest of the book. So that's unfortunate. And this is a lot of people like this book, and I'm just not one of them. So 2 stars. All right, so the next one, I literally just finished maybe 3 or 4 days ago. It's a brand new release this year, and it's by Kirsten White, and it's Hide. I also don't have this book. Sorry, honey. So you just got to put that up there for me. It is brand new. I got it on the Kindle, so it's an ebook. I'm definitely not going to be buying this book because it was a bore fest. It's supposed to be a horror. It's about, the reason why it's called Hide is because it's about characters who play a grown-up game of hide and seek in a very scary, run-down amusement park. Sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? It's not. Don't even think it is, because it's not. It's not at all. Not even a little. And it was kind of quite boring. And then when things started getting like interesting, the book ended. It has one of those. Just heads up. Also, if you are not a big fan of open endings, it has one of those. I don't care one way or the other. If it wants an open ending, fine, go for it. If it doesn't, fine, go for that. I don't hate it and I don't love it. Like, I'm just right smack in the middle of that. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. But I do know that the book, for what it was supposed to, what it could have been, what amazement that would have been awesome, right? Like playing a adult game of hide and seek in a abandoned, rundown amusement park in the dark. Awesome stuff. And it's not, and it sucked. And it kind of sucks that it sucked so badly because it's not a big book. And not only that, but the way it was written really annoyed me because it was in third person, but from the point of views like that you're reading on would like flip-flop all over the place. So you'd be reading from one character, you'd be in third person reading from that in that character's like mindset or what have you, or situation, and then you immediately jump into another situation and another character in the same, like almost in the same paragraph. And it was like, wait, oh, we're not talking about that person anymore. Okay, we're talking about this person over here now. Okay. And there was two characters that were hiding in part of this game, and they had the same name. And one was, I forgot the name of it, but let's just go with Elsa. One was Elsa, and one was Elsa 2. That's how they named them. So are you Elsa? Are you Elsa 2? What? We're jumping all over the place from character to character. You're not giving me any kind of like, not even a paragraph like break. Come on, chick. The way it was written sucked. It was boring, and the ending fell flat. So, I mean, can't get much worse than that. Obviously, I gave the book a 2-star. I only usually give books 1 stars when I get more than halfway through and I am so utterly annoyed or pissed off or bored with the book to the point where I don't even want to finish it. So that's when I get it. So 1 star. But I give myself this rule. I have to be more than halfway into it, so that way I can say that I gave it a fair shot before I go off and give it a 1 star on Goodreads, because I hate the people who are like, I read 1 paragraph, or I read 1 chapter, and then I gave it 1 star, and I'm like, just don't rate it then. Just don't rate it. But, so that's what my rules are. So in case you're curious about why I give these 2 books that pissed me off and bored me to crap, why I gave them 2 stars and not 1 stars is because I got through the book completely. Both of those books got 2 stars for me. So we're going to move on to books now that I actually have. So that way there's no more of that editing and putting that stuff in. Isn't that exciting for you? So the next book that we are going to talk about is called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know this is a very loved book. So please, if you loved this book, don't hate me. This book is about a woman who is having what she considers a really, really, really crappy life. She doesn't see the point in doing it anymore. She decides that she's going to end her life. And when she does, she goes to this library. And to come to find out that there are multiples of her lives, of all of her lives, and she was able to go to her other lives and live them and see what would have happened if she made other choices in her life. So, for instance, like, there's a guy that she broke up with, and what happens if I decide not to break up with him and be with him instead? What would my life look like that? But it's almost like a slap in the face self-help book. I wanted more entertainment fiction than I got. I felt like more of it, like the author was talking to me and being like, do you understand? Your life is as good as it can be. Be happy where you're at in life. Do you understand? Be happy. And I was just like, okay, did I pick up a self-help? I'm so confused. I didn't think I did. I thought I picked up fiction. I guess I didn't. It kind of like irked me. It wasn't the best way of, I guess, of telling the story. I felt like it could have been a little bit more entertaining when she goes to these worlds. That's another thing. When she goes to these other lives of hers, you have to go through, as a reader, you have to go through the fact that she doesn't know what's going on in this life. Like, they're not giving her like a little, like, here's a rundown of everything. Now you're ready to take over this life. They just like throw in, they're like, good luck. She'd be like, wake up and she'd be like, okay, where am I at? What's going on? What's happening? What's new in this life? What am I doing today? Am I supposed to know this person? And she does that every single time. And so after a couple times, it's fine. But when you're going through all these lives, it's like you have to go through paragraphs of her doing the exact same thing, like trying to figure out what's going on before she's able to be this person. And so this version of herself. So those were a little bit of a letdown. And then, like I said, it felt like it was almost like the author was like trying to like put out a message of love thyself, but he was like slapping you over the face with it. I found the concept pretty interesting. I enjoyed parts, especially her lives. Like there's one where there's one life. I'm like I said, I don't want to do spoilers. God, this is hard. There's one life, the very last one, that I really enjoyed reading from her point of view on that life. Wasn't a fan of the ending either. I mean, I was, but at the same time, it just felt kind of almost cheesy. Like I was reading a YA or middle grade even. It was just kind of cheesy in my mind. I gave it three stars. It wasn't like a complete wash or like fun. And I'm even telling my husband that he should read this because I think he would enjoy it more. He's more about like how the brain works kind of stuff, and I'm just not. And so I think he would enjoy this a little bit more than I did. I gave it 3 stars. Book's just not for me. Okay, so the next one I'm going to talk about is, I already talked about this in my last video, but so I won't like go into like the long drawn out discussion I had last time, but it will be the Mistborn Trilogy, and specifically since it's about this year, these two, The Well of Ascension and A Hero of Ages. I read both this year. The very first one, Mistborn, I read last year, so we're not going to count that one. This trilogy got a 3-star from me. It was okay. And this is by Brandon Sanderson, which is a very well-loved author, and a lot of booktubers that I follow and watch religiously really like this book. And some people even say that they didn't even like fantasy until they read this series, and then they were into fantasy and they started reading fantasy. So I thought I was going to really enjoy this fantasy series, and it was just okay. It was decent, but it wasn't something that I'm just like gushing over by any means. The first one was probably my favorite. The first and the third one were my favorite. The third one because there was an ending. You got to see what happened to everybody, which is always something people want to know about when they're reading series. And in the beginning was good because it brings on this magic system that I had never even read. I don't think I will ever read about ever again in the aspect of it's all about metals. So characters are able to swallow metals, and then gives them extra abilities to do certain stuff depending on the metal. And a Mistborn is able to swallow any metal and use that metal. Usually it's one metal they're allowed to use. They can swallow whatever they want, apparently. It's kind of weird that you're swallowing metals. They can swallow anything, but they only can burn. They call it burning. They can only burn a certain metal for them to help them in combat or doing something heroic, okay? And a Mistborn can use any of the metals. They can burn any of the metals to help them. Vin, who is the main character, she is a Mistborn, and the fighting that happens in all 3 books is fantastic, and the magic system is pretty dang cool. When it was explained, I thought it was pretty awesome. And anytime that a fighter uses any of the metals and it's explained during the fight, I thought that was pretty cool. I liked the main characters. It's just that Vin is, like I said, is the Mistborn. And then there's the guy that she falls in love with, Ellen, I think it was. You get a lot of their perspective. Especially Vin is mainly the one in the first one, but you get Ellen a lot in the second and the third one. And it just feels like the third thought process, the way that they were thinking and the things that they were thinking about, is exactly the same from start to finish. Like they don't, Ellen is worried about the way that the country is ran and trying to be good. And Vin is constantly worried if she was good enough. I wanted them to think about other things, because you're in the brain a lot. It's almost like a big loop constantly. Like the thought process is exactly the same over and over and over again. And it's just, after a while, it just gets kind of like, okay, well, I mean, you thought that from get-go, but all right, let's talk about it in the third book too, sure. I mean, as a reader, I knew that already, but let's take another chapter to talk about how your thought process again. Just like any other, this is about them trying to make a better world, and they have a king or a ruler, and so obviously with that kind of scenario in any fantasy, there's going to be a lot of political talk about, how it needs to be ran and what's good and what's bad, and let's sit around on a table and discuss it with my people, my trusty advisors, and I've had enough of that as well. I read a lot of that from Game of Thrones. When I first started Mistborn, I kind of just got off of all the Game of Thrones books, what's out so far. The political stuff, I'm just over it. I really am. And there's quite a bit. He kind of like wrote like a prequel to this, a 3-series prequel to this, and I'm just not going for it because I didn't care about this one. So there you go. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to talk about is actually becoming a movie. And the movie was actually shot where I live in Oklahoma, so that was pretty awesome. But the book wasn't. It's called Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI. And this is by David Gran. And a lot of big shots are going to be in the movie, like Leonardo DiCaprio, I know, is going to be in it. What I was expecting, to be honest with you, it's almost like a true crime book where we got more about the Osage murders and that whole like conspiracy and everything revolving around that, and the way the Native Americans, the way they were treated back then, and all of that. That's what I was expecting. And you get some of that. You do. Because it does say the birth of the FBI. You get to talk about the people that are involved in making the FBI and their whole life and where they're coming from and their families and how they feel. And I don't give a crap about any of that. I didn't care about that. I wanted the Osage murders, how that was more investigated into, more looked into, and really they're talking more about how the FBI screwed up. And instead I got a history lesson on how the FBI came to be and how maybe they shouldn't have been, because they weren't even helpful in the first place in this scenario at all, not even a little. I'm hoping that maybe the movie will be more focused on the whole scenario of the Osage murders and the whole conspiracy on that, because that is very interesting and it is pretty cool. And this book is not going to do that for you, let me tell you. If you're more interested in FBI and how that all came about in this scenario, then definitely this is a book for you. I just wasn't a big fan. I gave it 3 stars because, like I said, the Osage murders and the Native American scenarios, all that stuff during this time period. It says the 1920s, like all that was in this book, and those times those were spoke about and explained to you of what the Native Americans were going through. All that was extremely interesting and very something much I wanted to read about. Those parts made it a 3-star, because I'm telling you right now that if those parts weren't in there as much as they were, it would have been a 1-star, because I don't even know if I would have ended up finishing this book. And the only reason I did finish this book is because I was buddy reading it with someone else. You know who you are. And I wanted to finish it to be able to discuss it with them. But otherwise, I probably would have ended up I probably would have DNF'd this book at some point in time. Towards the end, it does start talking more about the Osage murders and the trials and all that stuff. And so that was interesting. I found that part interesting. And so if I wouldn't have been able to get to that part, then I wouldn't have been able to give it a 3 stars. Okay, so the last book that we're going to discuss saddens me quite a bit. I grew up loving this movie so much. This is one of the times where you're like, oh, the movie was better than the book, and people who read books are like, okay. This is one of those times for sure. The movie was definitely better than the book, and that would be The Princess Bride. It's illustrated, and it looks pretty hefty, but it's not, only because there's more to this than just The Princess Bride. There's The Princess Bride, and then it goes into Buttercup's Baby, and other, like, it goes into other stories, like I guess little short novellas, and that's in this book. I didn't get to those. I didn't read those. And the reason I didn't read those was because I did not enjoy this book as much as I thought I would. the William Goldman, the guy who created the book, also did the screenplay for the movie. So I'm not sure if he did the screenplay and then decided to make it a book or vice versa. And it's told kind of an interesting way. It almost confused me for a minute because Goldman kind of writes it in a way that you think, like he's trying to tell you that when he was a little boy, he got sick and his dad read him this book and he thought it was fantastic. He thought it was wonderful. It was the best adventure romance. And so he wanted his son to read it, and his son got bored after the first chapter and was like, I wasn't a big fan, Dad. And so he went back into the book to kind of read it and realized that there was a lot to the book that probably could have been cut out, make it more of an interesting book. So that's in the middle. And then he goes through, that's a whole chapter about him doing all that and telling you what his plans are. And then in the middle of the story, he'll be like, this part's pretty boring, so I cut this out. Just know that there was a lot of political talk in this chapter, or, this chapter was a whole lot less because of this, or this chapter was out because blah, blah, blah. Like he kind of like sneaks himself in here and kind of like explains to you that he edited this and he edited that. And it's done so well that I thought that was the case for a little while. And then I was like, wait a minute. No. I looked into it. I was like, no, William Goldberg was the man that did it all. So I'm so confused. Wait a minute. It's a spoof. So like he wants you, that's part of the story. That's part of the humor of this book. And it does have humor in it. The movie, the people that they placed, the actors that they placed in these characters were spot on perfect. And if it wasn't the fact that I watched the movie first multiple times before I even got to this book, if it wasn't for that, I would have DNF'd this book, even with the humor. And the only reason why is because I was able, when I was reading these characters, from these characters' point of views, I was able to put these actors in my mind why I'm reading it, because and the way they spoke and the way they talked. Because, oh my God, let me tell you, the movie is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you gotta, because it's great. There are characters in the book and the movie that, because of obviously time crunch, they're not able to like put in like their backstories or what have you. And in the book, their backstories are in there. And I really enjoyed those backstories. But the way the story is told as a whole, it's just kind of boring. And I went into this book I did expect a lot because I enjoyed the movie so much, and I still enjoy the movie so much. And this book let me down because I did not. The book, the only reason I would suggest, if you've watched the movie and you really, really, really like the movie, the only reason I would suggest reading the book is if you want the backstories of the characters that you love so much, because they're all in here. And if you're interested in any of those, just find those backstories of those characters. I mean, I think they're even labeled in here. So just find those characters, chapters, and read those chapters and move on with your life, because you don't need to read all this. Backstory, yes. The rest of the story, no. The actual book is about a romance between a farm boy named Wesley and the bride. I think her name is the bride. I don't think they ever give her... Oh, Buttercup. That's right. Buttercup. And so it's about them and their romance and how love conquers all, kind of thing. So great as a movie. Sorry. So that would be it. That's my last book, thankfully. I've read a lot. And so the fact that this was the small little amount that I have is all that I have to, gripe about. Good stuff, I think. It's good. I hope the rest of my reading journey this year is as good as this has been so far, because I've definitely had a lot more that I liked. And not even all these books were, a lot of these were 3 stars for me. So, hey, that's not bad either. It's just disappointing. It was a disappointment, not a bad book. Make sure that's clear. That's it, guys. Thanks. Bye.